In this video, I will show you all the life drawings I did in 2024. One thing I want to try this year is to have a more alla prima, whimsical feel rather than those academic, super fine rendered paintings. Hello people on the internet. I've done a video of portrait and life drawings in the past where I showcase all my drawings. In this video, they are all paintings because this year I've only been painting for the live sessions because I moved on. You need to move on. I'm gonna start showing from the bigger paintings to smaller paintings. The bigger paintings are actually not that big. It's like 16 by 20. So the first painting, actually my least favorite painting of this year. I spent quite a lot of time on this one. So you can see it's just not whimsical enough and the composition doesn't make sense, so many negative space. That's because I started this painting very indecisively. I actually started this painting with a very hot background color and I want to try something very contemporary, the color wise anyways, but then I was discouraged to do so and I don't know what I was thinking. I obviously didn't decide on anything, so I keep changing my mind and then ending up with this style, if you want to call it like that. The one thing I like about this painting is this chair here. I like how my brush marks here, and then I like this little sketch. So we often do a little sketch on the corner just to show the gesture of the pose. This is obviously done very quickly. And you actually notice it's on a different angle. That's because I moved halfway painting it. Anyway, there's a lot of detailed renders. Like the skin is very detailedly rendered. Amid the transition here can be a lot better. But in the torso area, I paid quite a lot of attention to the color temperature. It's warmer here and cooler here as it's further away from the light source and all the surrounding environmental colors reflecting onto it. Yeah, I don't like this painting and it's been in my closet ever since, so back to where it belongs. The next big one, it's also not my favorite. The big ones is just, it's not my favorite. Well, but I don't hate this one as much as the other one though, because the composition is more fun. And I started to experiment things. For example, this candle light was obviously not there. There was no open flame there. I added in this light. I fabricated the highlights here, candle light here on the leg, which didn't exist in the real life model. The overall looks okay, but the likeness of her face, well, there's an excuse of this is more of a figure drawing, so you pay more attention on the figure, not the face. But still, I tried to paint the face. Then I'm gonna judge the face. I give it a 4 out of 10 in terms of likeness. I painted her head significantly too small as well. She should grow 18%. And then, I also fabricated this magical stuff as well. And I also like this little sketch here, how the light fades from top to bottom and then this high contrast color. Seems like this and this and this is all fabricated. That's why I don't hate this one as much like the other one. The process was more fun for me, although the result is not the best. I also quite like the textures I've created here for the cloth. I think this is an okay painting. Just I painted her head too small. Okay, the next bigger painting is actually a more recent painting. This one, it's a funky shape. Not really that funky, but not that common. This one is done very quickly. That's 2 sessions, maybe 3. I can't remember. By the way, one session is 3 hours, but there will be breaks in between, so the painting time is more like 2.5 hours. So when I say one session, it's 2.5 hours of painting time. When I say 2 sessions, that means I spent 5 hours painting it. This one, I don't hate it. I mean, aesthetically, it's alright. When I see this painting, it's alright. Alright is the word that comes to my mind. What I hate about it, it's just alright. What I love about it, I like the contrast here. I like the sense of form. And then I like the hierarchy of light from top to bottom. Yeah, that's it for this one. I think that's all the bigger sizes. And then we're gonna move on to size 11 by 14. As the size goes smaller, I like some more. Let's see this one. This is one of the recent ones too. Okay, this one is done in 2 sessions. I did another painting from this same exact spot. For this painting and for the several others too, I was using a color called Terra Verte to do the first layer for the under drawing. For this layer, I'm using only this color, no other colors. And I would use the white of the canvas as my white. So I would use that to do the under drawing. Here's what it looks like. The second session would be a week later. It's completely dry. So I come back, I add the colors. What I like about it, because I spent a whole session just on the drawings, focused just on the shapes and the value, I had a more precise shape design, the likeness. The whole image just has a more finished drawing vibe, which I don't hate, but I also like a painterly. Like I mentioned before, that's something I was trying more and more this year. Actually, why don't we look these 2 different paintings from the same angle together? Okay, I found it. Ta-da! This one is an it's a 9 by 12. I did this one in 1 session, meaning 2.5 hours. This one is double the time. You can see there's way less refined shapes. The edges are more blurry, if you may. And then there's something else I'm also trying, which is to make the color extra chromatic, because I don't like how gray it looks here. I don't mind there's no detail at all in the shadow areas. Here you can see the outline of the air, but here is almost completely omitted, which brings your attention more to the light areas. I also like how transparent it looks. The bottom of his upper lip, I like this feel of translucency in the shadow area. That also exists here too though. Okay, moving on. This one is quite good, I have to say. It came out better than I anticipated. It is terribly sunken in. I haven't applied a varnish yet, but I'm using a polarized filter, so it's not too bad from your view. Anyway, I like the composition. Maybe a tiny bit more head space. It looks fine now, but if you frame it, it will eat in maybe a 1/4 of an inch. I like the painterly quality of the chair, of the hands. Actually, the painterly quality is everywhere. I guess that's why I like it. The sense of structure is sound. The light and the dark of her robe is probably too over the place, but they are not distracting. Maybe I should put in more of an light and dark hierarchy. I like this chromatic accent on her cheek. I like the blinks from her accessories. I like the highlight on the chair. The hands were challenging though, because this is a portrait session, so the model was not necessarily instructed to pay attention to how they are posing below their neck. So the hands, I had to lock it down very quickly. Next one. This one, I spent quite a few sessions on this one. Can't remember exactly how many, maybe 5, maybe even 6. Maybe even 7, I don't remember. Anyway, let's look at it and let me think what I like about this one and what I hate about this one. Okay, I like the form, the depth is pretty solid. This is clearly in front, this is clearly further back. I like the variety of the edge qualities. I especially like the back of the chair here, how the shadow looks like against the light. And I like this foot and then the reflection of it. Okay, what I don't like how this leg of the chair, this foot, is so undone compared to this foot of the chair and this leg. I should have brought this area to a higher finish, at least to this level, same or higher. This is delicious highlight though. Good. Well, another painting I don't hate. think we're doing great. Now we're moving on to size 9 by 12. You recognize this model? It's also this guy. This model was our winter model, so it's quite recent. And I was becoming more and more like a la prima focused. This is done in one session, so 2.5 hours. I think the result is quite good considering 2.5 hours is actually not that much time. I like the sketchiness of his coat hanging on the back of the chair. Quite a few delicate details, small tiny marks on the face, and the likeness is, I'd give it 7 out of 10. And I like the texture of the hair, a hint of fluffiness against bony areas of his face, and then the meaty feel of the torso, of the cheek. I think I did a good job communicating, translating the sense of texture and material. I didn't have enough time to do the hand though, because I've spent all my time on the face and torso. It was either the face or the hand. Maybe I should have picked the hand. Oh, actually, I know why I picked the face, because this is supposed to be a portrait session. We were supposed to just paint the face, but I painted his upper body too, because why not? Okay, another portrait. This one is done in 2 sessions. I did this in the midst of summer. I think things look okay here. I could probably give more contrast, darken the neck and the back of the head area, so I can give more sense of turning, just omitting some dark areas to give more emphasis on the light areas. Some other things to improve: play around more with the textures, the brush mark making. I do like how soft the eye is though. When you're looking at someone in front of you, just a small portion is in really sharp focus. So if you render everything out very sharply, it will look photographic. It's also about balance. You want balanced things so you can have contrast and play around with it to the effect you want, to let people know what is the start of the show and what's just peripherals. It's also about variety. Slightly harder edges, slightly softer edges, and harder edges, softer edges, relatively sharp edges. A very sharp edge here too. Actually, I don't know, this sharp edge is questionable. Should it be this sharp? I mean, the ear is actually the closest part of his face to us, so naturally that could be sharper. I think here is maybe a bit too gray. I understand there's reflected light from the shirt, but yeah, just look a little bit murky here. But overall there's no out of place color. The value makes sense, so it still looks alright. Wait a minute, actually from the camera it looks really good. Like this light area makes total sense. So maybe it's just I'm seeing glare. Okay, same dude, different angle. Wait a minute, I think I did the frontal first. I spent 2 sessions on the front, spent another 2 sessions on this profile angle. I actually took a month-long break, and then this is the first live painting after that break. I feel something has changed. You know, when you're just grinding and you don't feel improvement, you should do 2 things. First, dramatically increase the amount of practice or exercise you're doing. Second, is just take a break. So I was trying to have a more painterly quality. I think it's arguably easier to paint highly refined painting. I think everyone is capable of adding details and details. Sometimes it's actually a bad thing, especially for a lot new beginners. Focus on the details too much too early. Went a little bit off tangent anyway. The difference between the ears is maybe too much. This one is too indecisive. Everything's a bit too soft. Make it look a little bit too big. But again, it's not like super out of place. I think it's still part of the whole image. It's fine. I like all the edges here are softer compared to his eyes, his brow bones and his nose and his lips. The muscles here, I think I did an okay job. And I like this accent of chromatic ochre, which also plays well with the whole skin tone. Yeah, I think this is a good painting. What? Another painting that I don't hate? That I'm actually proud of? This one has a solid structure, a good shadow and light contrast. But I did bet on the likeness, which is the number one, the most important thing if you're doing a commission. You want it to look like the sitter. Doesn't matter all the fancy stuff you add on to it. If it doesn't look like the sitter, it's a failure. So likeness aside, I think everything is a little bit too chalky. By that I mean, maybe I can add more chroma into the shadow areas, even the mid-tone areas. Next one is also a quick sketch done in maybe even less than 2.5 hours, because I remember I started this one late for some reason. I like this painting, looks very, looks solid, full of potential. Wait a minute, am I just admitting another painting of my own that I like? I like how the cast shadow of her body is connecting with her long hair, give it a little bit of magical, imaginative look. I like how I did the back of her chair, this little button here. And then the things that can be improved is probably too gray here. That's not really a problem if I'm painting more on this one, then I will be adding more pigment, because I think part of the grayness comes from the painting being thin. So I guess I should paint with more paint. Actually, that's a very valid critique for myself. I define that to be one of my bigger problems. Okay, this one. I think same problem for the paint being too thin. I think I'm too cheap on my paints. I mean, their artist quality, they are expensive, so can't blame me. You should subscribe. You should like my videos so I can make some YouTube money. Okay, this one is alright. It's just like the last painting. Actually, the same model too. But last painting just have a better sense of form. There's not much going on the torso area. Everything is very early stage if you... Oops. I guess that's all the time for that one. This one, also a quick sketch. Done in one session. She is a fantastic model. The same model as this one. They are all fantastic models. Modeling is actually hard. Sitting 2.5 hours, harder than you think. Oh my god. I think I like this one as well. So what I like about it and what I hate about it. I like how the brush marks hugs her form, meaning the brush strokes are not too flat, they are not random, they are not too uniformed like those post-impressionists. They actually already telling you the movement of the torso and the muscle. For instance, like those marks here, here, and here. And I like the high chromatic local colors on some of the areas. Now contrast to that, here's the uniformed brush marks. What a uniformed brush mark does to the image is it flattens it, which plays to my favor because I want to flatten the shadow area. You're not supposed to see as much details in the shadow area compared to the light areas. I have a variety of brush marks to aid me to describe the form, like those ones going this way, and so one's going this way, this way. And then when it comes to this big shadow shape, I just make it flat to contrast. I like the thinness here. It's a sketchy aesthetic. I like the softness here. There's a variety of thickness of paint and then some accents of chroma and value shifts to give a sense of detail. It's not real detail, they're fake details. I like the chair. I like the softness of the overall image. Then there's areas where there's hard edges, shadow shapes coming through. Very interesting. When you design the edge and the shapes, you want to think like it's a music piece. You want the music have interesting rhythms. You want it to have variety. Same with the visual language. Now the place where the edges should be softer versus harder, there's reason behind it too, of course. You can't just randomly make them. It should more or less follow the natural rules. For example, something further away should be naturally a lot softer compared to something much closer to you. and a form that turns away more gradually should have a softer edge compared to a form that's very bony and sharp. Yeah, quick sketchy painting. I like it. Here we have a one I don't like. So I think a lot of shapes is not making total sense, or it's too ambiguous. It's fine to have some ambiguous shapes, but it's not fine if everything is ambiguous. For example, here the collarbone is too ambiguous. The shoulder slope here too ambiguous. The neck of her shoulder muscle too ambiguous. There should be a more separation here. The cat's shadow shape needs to be more refined. I mean, the shadow area is okay to be ambiguous compared to the light side. But then we look at the light side, still, the muscle of her face, her cheekbone transition to her cheek, and then the nose bridge, too ambiguous. Not enough information to tell what's going on. Light and dark, they make sense. But when light meets dark, they have to connect. So the values are making sense. The shadow shapes can be more defined, but I think the biggest problem here is between those shapes. From one light shape to another light shape, from one light shape to a dark shape, between all the shapes, they don't have good connection. That's the problem here. And then besides that, some pigments are just too translucent and it made it muddy, made it gray. Moving on. So this one has quite a lot of textures, quite a lot of varieties as well, which is why I think this one looks fine. This is very stylized. It can be too loud if there's too much brush marks, but they're somewhat unified, so I think it's fine. It looks intentional enough, and it is intentional. It's not sabotaging the overall composition. There's a good hierarchy of light, good chroma. Maybe I could unify the hue in the light areas, but this is fine because we have a lot of textures in the shadow area, in the peripherals, so it's fine, and maybe it's even better to have more textures in light areas so they can compete and contrast each other. Yeah, I think this one is good. Oh, I think that's the last 9x12. So now we are moving on to 8x10. I think all the 8x10s are done in one session. That's why I paint them small. Whoa, look at it. Framed it. I did this one earlier this year. I like the sketchy quality. I like the brush marks. Yeah, I was told I can have a more variety on that. Maybe I use a broader, bigger brush marks on her clothing. Maybe I have less obvious tiny brush marks on the background. I think that's a very valid critique. But as long as they are uniformed, I think they are fine. But I will experiment on that for my future paintings. This one is pretty solid. I think I did a good job on her hairstyle. Some would say it looked unfinished. But I mean, this is technically just a sketch. If you have a huge, finished, highly rendered painting, then have canvas showing through can appear unfinished. So, moving on. This one, I like the chroma. I like the contrast. Maybe I can have more texture on the lower half of his face, but I think I ran out of time. I think this is decent for 2.5 hours. It is a promising start. Next one. This is also one session painting, but this one somehow appears more finished, isn't it? Let me explain why. When you leave out backgrounds, like all the other ones, like this one, it just appears sketchy. When you have all the background filled in, then the sense of atmosphere, the sense of environment will be way more immersive. That's what I did on this one. I want this one to look less sketchy, I guess. I like the sense of the form on her thighs, on her torso, even on her head, on her shoulder. One thing I feel unnatural about this painting is her arm. A bit noodle-like, so it's lacking some anatomy refinement. I like this area the most. The contrast between this and that. Okay, this painting. I like the pose of this painting. I was sitting lower, she was sitting on a platform a little bit higher. So this angle, I'm actually looking up. I like this authoritative angle of portrait poses. This is very rough, very sketchy. I mean, that itself is not a problem because that's just a stage of a painting, but I did wish I was more efficient. This is a painting from earlier this year, so I think I did improve and become more efficient. I was able to finish more, to render more in the same amount of time. I'd say it was a good start. This one, not as good as other ones because actually I like all the colors here. The yellows, the orange, the red, the pinks, the whites. And then there's still a solid sense of form. And then I like how thin, yet there's some varieties on the hue and brush marks. I don't know what it is. It looks fine, but I also really don't feel happy about it. It's lacking something, or something can be better. That's always the case. Next one, what I like about it is very nice, very strong sense of light hierarchy, the flow of light. The hand, the fingers and the feet could have more information, especially the shape here is just a bit crude, and the feet it's hard to read, it even a little weird. This is also beginning of the year, so I was just starting and not as efficient yet, but I like the reflection here. Okay, the last one from life is a sketch of my mother. Something to improve. I could be more decisive. I could load more pigments to my brush. So some areas would be thicker, would have more sense of light and chroma. It's just too thin all over the place and make the painting look gray and less weighty or substantial, if you get what I mean. I think the sense of weight, the sense of texture, physical meat is important when you're painting a figure portrait, and that comes with sufficient paint. If you paint too thin, it just doesn't look like flesh. Alright, I think that is all. Thanks for watching, I guess.